Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Well, good morning again, everyone. Welcome those who came during the sit. Hey, Mark, would you mind giving maybe the chair from the desk? So to welcome us back, just acknowledge who's in the room. We go around and say our names, and I always like to invite people to share their personal pronoun, not to make any assumptions. So I can start. So I'm David, he, him.
My name's Christian.
I'm Kay. Michael, he, him.
My name is Prasada Chitta, he, him.
Mark. Cass, he, him, she, her.
Ron.
My name is Mark, he, him.
My name is Bob.
Jeff, he, him.
My name is Jerry, he, him.
I'm Ed, he, him. I'm Clint.
Tim, he, him.
I'm Samba.
I'm Larry.
Jack.
My name is Stephen.
I'm Tony, he, him.
Mike.
Matthew, he, him.
Michael, he, him.
Brad.
I'm George. Troy, he, him.
Bill, he, him. Ray, he, him. John, he, him.
Richard, he, him.
Jim.
Don.
Jay.
And welcome, Bill. Thanks for being here. I'll give a quick introduction. Bill Scheinman is a graduate of the Spirit Rock Community Dharma Leaders Program and also served as the board president for the San Francisco Insight Meditation Community. He's the author of a meditation guide called Moment by Moment, and is currently teaching in the Bay Area mindful-based reduction. So, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, David. It's great to be here, everyone. Actually, my Dharma practice began in this room, and many, many years ago. And I've lived in the community upstairs for a number of years, and it's just great to be back. I live in Oakland now, so I don't get to San Francisco that often. I think I went to Kabuki Baths about some Saturday about 5 months ago, and before then I don't remember actually. So it's really good to just come back to a place that I associate with so many positive vibes and so much history.
Could you speak a little louder?
Yeah, sure, for sure. Thanks. I also want to mention that I've got some sort of a weird thing happening with my this eye right now, and it's some sort of an allergy or eye strain, and it's a little watery, and so I might be mopping it up, a little bit, and I'm not squinting at you or making funny faces. It's just kind of what condition that I'm dealing with right now. So this morning, I'd like to talk about letting go. That's my subject. And actually, I gave this talk a couple of years ago, and I'm basically retrofitting the talk to accommodate what I've learned in the last couple of years, and I have learned some more things about letting go. So this is going to be a very different talk. I didn't give this talk here 2 years ago, but and I think this is, it's January, and it's often a time of resolutions, right? And when we make a resolution, to some extent, what we're resolving to do is to let go of something. So I'd like to talk about letting go and how our practice helps us let go, or how we let go within our practice, and how we maybe do that in daily life. So just an inquiry, just to think for yourself. What do you have a hard time letting go of?
Trump.
The answer can be really interesting. Sometimes it's small things that maybe we have to let go of, or we have issues with letting go of. Parking spot. Has anyone had to let go of a parking spot? You're across the street, you see this perfect space, and all you need to do is do a U-turn, and you get it, and just before you make your move, a car comes up and grabs it. And it's like, that can be really annoying, It's just like, but, you're being forced to let go in that moment. Or maybe it's, you have a certain way of grating cheese that for some reason, maybe you have a different type of equipment where you are, and suddenly you can't grate cheese the way you want, and it's just like so annoying. Perhaps letting go is about something big. Letting go of your self-view, for example. Maybe you have a view of yourself that you're the smartest person in the room, or that your political views are the most astute, or whatever it might be. And then suddenly you find yourself in a situation where that's not the case. And you have to you're faced with this idea of letting go of that self-view. Perhaps it's hard letting go of your looks. Has anyone found that as you get older, the body changes?
Slightly.
Daily, right? This is like a shocking thing. I used to have black hair, and then I had salt and pepper hair, which was really cool. And it's just like everyone, it was like a sweet spot. And then all of a sudden the gray just kept growing. It kept expanding, and I didn't want that. And so I indulged in the time-honored tradition called Clairol for men. And, I thought it looked great. And it was like, I have black hair again. And, my friends always, told me, it looks great, Bill. And then finally, one of my honest friends said to me, she said, it looks terrible, Bill. It looks awful. I said, well, all my friends say it looks good. She goes, they're lying. They're just trying to make you feel good. And I realized she was right. And in that moment, I let go. And it's interesting. I'll talk about different flavors of letting go. Because sometimes it's easy and sometimes it's not easy. Maybe it's hard to let go of a plan or an ideal or a relationship. So these are all things that we let go of sometimes, have to. Why is it so hard to let go? It's because of clinging. We're clinging to something. And what are we clinging to? We're clinging to what we've known to be true, what's familiar, what's comfortable, what maybe makes us feel safe, and clinging to that. But the problem with that is whatever we cling to is impermanent, right? It's changing. So when we cling to something that's inherently impermanent, it's going to be painful to let go of it. And Buddhism always talks about not clinging, right? And that's because the idea of clinging is also, when you cling, you suffer. And there's this equation, which is almost like a perfect Dharma equation. This is the type of little formula that you see in kind of like in management circles these days. And some of you have probably heard this, but it's S equals P times R, which is suffering. S stands for suffering equals pain times resistance. So it's like pain is inevitable, but real pain happens when we're not letting go, when we're not letting go of whatever that thing is. So one of the fruits of Dharma practice is the idea that it helps cultivate the ability to let go. And there's small letting go, letting go of having to grate cheese a certain way, or liking to grate cheese a certain way. And then there's big letting go, which is, awakening. That would be the biggest. In the Four Foundations of Mindfulness Sutta, the Satipatthana Sutta, which is a very important teaching. It's basically the Buddha's operating manual for how to practice mindfulness. There's an expression, and he, or we could say she, they also, he, she, they, abides independent, not clinging to anything in the world. They abide independent, not clinging to anything in the world. It's said over and over again in this key, critical teaching of the Buddhas. And the whole idea of not clinging is actually very central in Buddhism. Even the word for awakening, nirvana, or in Pali, nibbana, basically implies not clinging. So the word, and this was pointed out to me, this analogy that I'm covering was pointed out to me first by Thanissaro Bhikkhu, who's a great meditation teacher down in Southern California. So he knows a lot about the breath. And he points out, well, the word nibbana means extinguishing a flame. And so that's not the surprising part, but what's interesting is, the other point he was making is, what does a flame cling to? It's actually clinging to the fuel. It's fuel. You put a bunch of sticks together, you light them, you make a fire. The flame is clinging to that fuel. And he says that the mind is just like that flame. When it ceases to cling to its fuel, whatever fuel it's clinging to, it can become free. It can become unbound. So a free flame of the mind. So there's a big emphasis in the Dharma, a big emphasis in clinging as a cause of suffering, and not clinging or letting go as a gateway to freedom. In my MBSR class, I sometimes share this story. According to an Indian tradition, to catch a monkey, first construct a small basket or cage that has a very narrow opening, slightly bigger than the size of a monkey's paw. Then suspend a peeled banana from the top of the basket. The monkey will reach in for the banana and will be trapped and captured because he won't let go. Apparently, one of my students told me that they catch raccoons this way as well, and other animals. So, the question for me, the inquiry to make is, what's your banana? What's your banana? What are you holding on to? That holding on to it is actually causing more suffering. And that letting go of it might actually cause some relief. And the thing about that is that the bananas that we hold on to they're different for all of us, and they also change. They change at different times in our lives. One of my bananas that I held on to was my consulting career. And this is what I was alluding to. I was speaking to David earlier about my biography and how it's changed a bit. But in 2006, I started a career as a consultant teaching mindfulness and in non-Buddhist settings, like in community, corporate settings. And that was my main goal, and I really went for it. I wanted to create a Dharma livelihood. That was what was really interesting for me. It's like teaching the Dharma in a way that could support myself, and I really went for it. And I got a lot of training, and I started teaching MBSR. I started working in corporate settings. I actually became a senior, they call it senior consultant at a major kind of Dharma company that basically it's all about the corporatization of mindfulness. And the thing is, everyone becomes a senior this and a senior that, and the world, that world is such a strange world. That's a separate talk right here, but it's kind of like there's a lot of, I would call it kind of shallow mindfulness being practiced out in the world for the sake of basically management and corporations. And anyway, it's interesting. I went through an interesting phase in my life, and what ended up happening is it didn't work. I couldn't make a living in this way that I wanted to, and it was a crushing blow. But 2 years ago, I basically left that field and continued teaching here and there in different ways. But I left the consulting world kicking and screaming. Kicking and screaming. Has anyone kicked and screamed? So I left the consulting fields kicking and screaming. Had I let go? I hadn't let go. No, I mean, the consulting world basically let go of me, but I hadn't let go of it. And I had to make adjustments, but I was hating it. And I caused myself a lot of suffering because I was beating myself up. How come I wasn't able to do this? How come certain people were able to do it? And I was comparing myself to other people. Just tons of suffering. I hadn't let go. I mean, I had to let go for financial reasons, but in here I had not let go. And 2 years later, I have to say I've largely let go, but there's still pieces in here that haven't let go, so I'm still working on it. So how do we practice letting go? I think it's really important to recognize that we're letting go all the time. Even though we may not think of it as letting go, but we're actually already letting go. For example, falling asleep. You fall asleep, you're letting go. It's a very natural way of doing it. If you're thinking about all the things you have to do the next day, and you start worrying, and you're tossing and turning, and you can't fall asleep, you're not letting go. But then when you do let go, you let go. So everyone here, just showing up this morning, there's so many things you can do in San Francisco, right? So many choices. You're making the choice to be here. And there's a letting go in that as well. It's like you're saying, this is what I value, this time. Just the choice to meditate is a letting go. It's a letting go of the habitual way we tend to deal with our lives. So even spending 30 minutes or 10 minutes or 5 minutes or even 1 minute sitting and being with your breath, you're letting go of the habitual way we relate to things. For example, being on autopilot. You're on autopilot. We're all on autopilot so much of the time. But when we're sitting with our breath, focusing, and then noticing our minds wandering and coming back, that act, that choice, that conscious choice to be present is something really different. Really, really different. And you're letting go of the habitual way. In the process of meditation itself, we're letting go all the time, just in the actual act of it. You know, you sit down, you focus on the breath, and then all of a sudden you start thinking about a meeting that you have to run. And there's going to be a lot of intense personalities at the meeting. Anyone have to do that recently? And then all of a sudden you realize, oh, I'm thinking about this meeting. Let's come back to the breath. And in the moment that you've abandoned the thoughts about your meeting and you come back to your breathing, you're letting go of worry. You know, you were worrying, and now you come back to the breath, you're letting go of worry. You're practicing doing that. Or you're sitting and meditating and focusing on your breath, and you start having fantasies about things you want. A vacation, a new car, sex, money. And all of a sudden you remember, wait a second, I need to be with the breath. So you come back to your breath. And in the moment you do that, you let go of desire. Isn't that great, the way that works? Or it could be anger, or any emotion, or any way that our minds and hearts get caught up. Simply by being present with ourselves, being present with the breath, or whatever we're focusing on, is a way of training ourselves to let go. And the more we do it, as we know from brain science, the more we do that, the more we're actually training our brains to do that. When we're on a meditation retreat and we're practicing intensively, 8 hours a day, more, you discover sometimes that your body's in pain in ways that you didn't realize. Maybe parts of your body are wounded that you didn't know were wounded. But you learn how to work with that over a number of days. And there's a letting go in that as well. You're letting go of the idea that your body has to be pain-free. And when you learn how to work with pain in meditation, you know, a painful knee. I just had my calf here started to fall asleep, so I was experiencing pain, so giving a talk, so wasn't going to sit through it, but when you're, in the meditation, on a meditation retreat, you're dealing with pain. You learn how to deal with pain there, a sore knee or pain in your shoulder. It's also training you how to deal with pain in other parts of your life, in relationships, difficult people. It gives you a training in being patient. We learn how to respond to pain rather than react to it. So, and there are many ways of practicing letting go in daily life. One thing that we learn how to do is we learn how to let go of the stories we tell ourselves. Is anyone a great storyteller? Does anyone believe their thoughts? I'm going to raise my hand because I believe mine all the time. One of the things that practice helps us do is it helps us build a more objective relationship with our minds. And not disliking our minds at all, but building a healthier relationship between the content of our minds and what knows that content. Because there's our thinking, which we can chase and believe in, or we can hold the thinking with spaciousness. So it's a different relationship. We're building a different relationship with our thoughts. And so we're letting go of the idea that our thoughts have to be true. or that we have to act on them. It's really seeing thoughts as events in consciousness rather than facts. Same thing with emotions. We practice letting go of emotions, but that doesn't mean getting rid of emotions. It just means, again, holding space for the emotions. If we hold space for our emotions, they tend to do their thing and then they self-liberate, which is kind of a Tibetan way of talking about it. We can also let go of the idea that we need to be in control of external events or other people. Does anyone believe that you can control external events or other people? Yeah, I mean, it's easy to get caught into that idea. Well, this person is not doing things the right way. Somehow I need to be able to, set things up so that everything is falling along the way I want it to. And it just doesn't work that way. But one of the things about letting go of controlling other people that's really helpful is that when you do that, you also start having a relationship with that person. You can have a real relationship with that person. So when we're letting go, what we're letting go of is we're letting go of the idea that that thing that we're letting go of is the source of happiness or permanent happiness. And one of the things that I've tried doing in my practice, just my daily life practice, is if I find myself reaching for something kind of out of habit or autopilot, I ask myself, is this going to make me happy? Like really happy? And the answer is almost always no. That doesn't mean that I won't actually grab the thing that I'm interested in, but at least I'm making the inquiry. I'm being a little bit more awake about it. So I want to say something really important about letting go. And letting go is not about getting rid of something. It's not about pushing something away aversively. Because if you push something away with aversion, that's just another form of clinging. So with letting go, in my experience, you don't really let go. Letting go, you don't do the letting go. Letting go does you, basically. I once had a little bump on my nose, and I took it to the dermatologist, and they put some liquid nitrogen on it. Has anyone had that experience? It's kind of an interesting experience. And basically nothing happened, but what ended up happening is that this bump started to become, over a number of days, a scab, and then it just fell off, just like that. And that's kind of how letting go is. It's when it's ready, the letting go will happen. If we try forcing ourselves to let go, it won't work. That's kind of one thing I want to emphasize. And there's a lot of, kind of this idea that we're not supposed to be attached. It's like, and there's this kind of like ideal Buddhist, that you're not supposed to be attached, and I need to let go of this, or I'm too attached, I need to just push things away, and again, that doesn't work in my experience. A lot of people say, don't cling, don't get attached. And I say, let yourself get attached. Let yourself cling, but be awake. Be awake when you're clinging. Notice what the clinging feels like. Notice how that's changing your experience, how that's changing your life. If you find yourself clinging, you're not doing anything wrong. that's just what's happening in your life at that moment. So the idea is to just be aware of it, aware of what you're doing. And also, it's an opportunity to learn about the clinging. Many years ago, my dad passed away, and I inherited his car. And it was a sporty, very nice, sporty, powerful car. And, it was not the kind of car that I would have driven, but it was very great to drive it. I drove it for 14 years, I think. And it was just fantastic, this great little car. And then there came a point where I needed to get rid of it because I was buying another car, a new car. And I had spoken to someone at the dealership, and they said, "Oh, we'll give you, X amount of cash for the car. Bring it in." So I took my dad's car for one last drive. I was driving down to one of the dealerships down here on South Van Ness, and I got onto the freeway, and I pressed on the gas, and the power of the car, took off, and I felt this feeling. It was like I realized this is the last time that I'm going to feel this car, the power of this car. And I suddenly realized that the power of the car reminded me of my father holding me. And I began instantly sobbing, weeping, because I knew that I had not let go of my dad and that I was still grieving. And by the way, I don't recommend weeping uncontrollably on the freeway, especially if you're going 80, which I was, because I was wanting to feel the power of that vehicle. And so when I got to the dealership, and I pulled into the driveway, and I've dried my tears at this point. And I saw the sales guy who was going to be giving me money for the car. I saw him inside, and I just turned around, drove out of the dealership, and drove back home. I did not sell my car that day. I wasn't ready to let go. And I learned, I had learned in that moment that I was still grieving my father. 3 weeks later, I donated the car. And it felt great. I was ready. I was ready at that point, but I had to experience the not being ready. It was all part of my practice. So we find the grace to let go when we're willing to open our hearts to clinging and to holding on. So what I'd like to do, I'd like to end this talk by opening up an inquiry to the group. And this is something that if you feel like closing your eyes, if that would help, you don't have to sit in any formal way or anything. But the inquiry that I'm offering you for the year 2020, what's the thing that if you let go of it would bring you the most freedom? What's the thing that if you let go of it would bring you the most freedom? Or just take a moment to contemplate this question. And so I invite people to, if you had your eyes closed, just to open them again and just open it up to questions or sharing about anything that I talked about, or if you'd like to share anything from the reflection or from the talk, I'm happy to, we can do a little popcorn back and forth. Please.
Fantastic topic. Kind of just what I needed to hear today. Thank you for that. So I guess it's about the kind of ultimate objective. Like you mentioned, the flame being fed by the fuel, and then if you let go of the fuel, then the flame can become a kind of free-form flame. Whereas, kind of, it seems like then the flame is just extinguished.
Yeah.
And so, I'm kind of lost in there. It's like, well, where are we going with letting go of the fuel?
Yeah. So, as in any metaphor, I think it's, if the metaphor doesn't work, if it's not helpful, don't even worry about it. The basic idea, it's just the principle that the mind is preoccupied with so much, and when it can let go of what it's preoccupied with, it's actually more free. It's true, a literal flame really is extinguished, but the mind there's something much deeper in the mind than that process. So it's more of a metaphor. But I appreciate that. Please.
I appreciated your talk. And attachment in relationship is a big issue for me. I'm wondering what experience have you had in relationship with attachment where you are able to get some sort of inner freedom about it, but you're still in relationship with the same person?
You mean are you talking about like a romantic relationship?
Yeah.
So, but one that's ongoing,
Right.
And there's attachment. I've had that. I've had that experience both ways. Where I was attached, or maybe my partner was attached, and because it's actually a two-way thing too. There's, it can hit you either way, and with relationship, it's something you just have to work with. It's hopefully our practice keeps us awake and alive enough to be able to navigate that. But it is something that, could you say a little bit more about the attachment part of it, and what's in that is, possibly challenging the relationship?
Well, the way I see it, I work with it, but it doesn't totally. And ultimately, it's you talk about attachment. I think another word is autonomy. So that we're looking for the object as support and fulfillment and pleasure. And at the same time, I think it's like what we really want is a connection with our own true nature in a deeper way.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it's working with that, getting clear on that.
Yeah, and sometimes a relationship that's can reflect your true nature too.
Yeah.
If both people are committed to the path, for sure. And then there are ways where we're still in shadows in our own minds and hearts, and the shadow side comes up as well. And so those are all things that are happening all at the same time in a relationship. The attachments and then the freedom also. Do you find that to be true? That there's freedom also, as well as attachment?
There's tremendous richness in the relationship, and just the ongoing process of learning about myself and just appreciating the essential beauty of the other person.
Yeah, for sure.
Even though I'm frustrated with some of the things they do, or there's a certain frustration there, but then it feels like it's a tension that is also engaging with it from a place of awakeness. Is like it's such a place of rich growth, I guess.
Yeah, it is. It is. And it's not simple either.
It's easy to say.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Please.
Again, others have said it, but I really needed to hear your talk today. There's been a very recent change in my living circumstances that have been very upsetting, very disturbing. I don't know if this is going to make sense. A song came into my mind about it, an old song. They paved paradise and put up a parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize that what I had before was, relatively speaking, the paradise, and I'm still attached to that. And I think if I understood a little bit of what you were saying today, I need to be focusing on, not focusing on the parking lot, and get free and feel what I need to feel.
Yeah, for sure. And really, it's holding space for what you're feeling with awareness, because we can be trapped by our feelings too, right? Or we can hold them with a sense of kindness, and it's like this too is happening. Okay, this has been a very painful thing that I'm going through right now. How can I be with this pain in a way that it can actually illuminate where I need to go? Yeah. Thanks. Hey.
Thank you, Bill. That was wonderful. I at some point had thought that the idea of letting go being enough was something that I needed to let go of. And recently I've just been thinking about it, not from a place of being upset, but just feeling like, kind of deeply feeling about being a wounded being. And I feel like there's something in what you said that's giving me a closer look at, there's so many things to let go of. So but just generally, how rich the world is when I'm aware of being wounded. That there's always space to be wounded, no matter how happy I am, really. And yeah, that's helpful for me.
Yeah, great. Thanks for sharing that. And I actually love what you just said too, because it's that we're all wounded, and when we're in touch with that, we're actually in touch with the truth. And life is much richer when we're in touch with the truth than if we're pushing it down, even if being in touch with the truth is also painful. So that's what that reminded me of. But thank you. Please.
Hi. Thank you. Yeah, that's a good resolution for you this year, letting go. It takes me back when my partner and I broke up, and I was in therapy, and I said to the therapist, well, I should have left him 2 years ago. And she said, no, you left him when you got sick and tired, and you're ready. And I always remember that, because sometimes you have regrets, you go, I should have done this earlier and stuff. And I always remember that, because timing is very important and stuff. So
yeah, timing is important, and it's different for each of us. And it's like the more I think about my life and all the things that I did that now seem unbelievably screwed up and crazy, like how the hell did I do that? When I think about it, it unfolded exactly the way it had to.
Yep.
Because that was me. Those were my conditions that I was working with. Yeah, I'm a lot wiser now. It would have been great if I had been a lot wiser back then, but I wasn't. So, yeah, thank you.
I was just thinking about what Prasadacharya said about feeling like enough, and that's what I wanted to let go of this year, not feeling like enough. But I realized it's kind of a hungry ghost out of control, because there's not enough money, there's not enough this, there's not enough, the glass is half empty. But it's a real hindrance.
It's a real
hindrance.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's, how do you work with that?
It depends on the situation, but lately I've been trying to just include it in my meditation if it comes up. Just allow it room and tell it, you can include it.
Right.
Yeah, and hear what it wants to say.
Right.
Yeah.
Great. Yep. Yeah, the hungry ghost is, that's a great archetype. I could totally relate to that.
One other question. What kind of car was it?
My dad, it was a Honda Prelude. It was one of those ones from the 90s, and it, had good horsepower, and,
Yeah.
it was really nice. Yeah. Yeah. But it was one of those cars where, as I got older, I'd get out of the car and it rode so low to the ground that as I would the only way I could get out of the car was basically fall out. I could never get out gracefully. It was like, oh, it's time to get something new. So. But. Please.
One of my characteristics is to jump to cartoons I've seen that may relate to the situation, and what you said reminded me of one cartoon that says the optimist sees a glass half full, the pessimist sees it glass half empty, the optometrist sees half a glass of water. I think that's what I need to be doing.
Yeah, interesting. It's all perception, isn't it?
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you. It's great being
We're
here.
about time, but it's nice just to keep it open and see what else might come up. Not be in a hurry. Does anybody have any more comments or questions? Holding back. Well, thank you again very much for being here. Thanks. Are there any announcements, things coming up, things happened that people need to know about? I have a little one. I'm the director for a youth performing company in Oakland, and tomorrow is the Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and the San Francisco Museum of African Diaspora every year has a big day of service, and the museum is free that day. A lot of activities going on, sometimes performances or lectures, and my students are going to be actually out there performing on the sidewalk from 11 to 1. So if you want to see some kids from Oakland dancing on stilts, I'll be there. It's pretty cool. Dimensions Dance performs in the afternoon on the sidewalk. It's really dynamic. And then it kind of follows around the tail of the parade, which ends up, I think, around there. I'm going to pass the mic to John, our host.
The host today is fingerfood or water for tea. So people that want to 12:30. Sign up sheet. And a dog bowl. I'll come around with a dog bowl. I think that's it.
So just a reminder, Donna is Hollywood for Generosity. It supports the Sangha, supports the rent here, supports our teachers, Larkin Street Youth, as well as the quarterly newsletter that's printed and mailed to a lot of incarcerated. Did we cover everything? Next week is open discussion, I think.
Yes.
Yes?
I always like to remind people that when we think of Donna, there's a window that we encourage people to think about, a $10 to $20 window. More if you're comfortable, less if you're comfortable. But we thank you, as David has pointed out, for supporting all the things that we do.
That's what it's used for. Yeah. Okay. I think that's it. Cass, we'll stand and do circle, but Cass, will you do the dedication? Yeah. And if you haven't memorized, they'll all say it together. All right, thank you. And afterwards, if we could just take a pause after the dedication, and now I'd like to close with the bowl, please.
By the power and truth of this practice, may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all be free from sorrow and the causes of sorrow. May all never be separated from the sacred happiness which is without sorrow. And may all live in equanimity without too much attachment or too much aversion, believing in the equality of all that lives.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.